Good afternoon and welcome to Salem at Work, the show about local business and workforce development. I'm your host, JD Shinn from the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the show. Throughout this show, we'll be discussing business efforts in our community and how they're impacting us. In today's show, we'll be talking about the Career Achievement Network, also known as theNET. theNET is an initiative to build a community and to invest into the workforce of tomorrow. My guest today is Tony Frazier, CEO of Incite Incorporated. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you today. So let's just fire off the questions and start with what can you tell me about theNET?
So theNET is a vision for bringing the community together to catalyze support for workforce development. As we look at the demographics in our region, there's over 60,000 young people in the state that fit a demographic called opportunity youth. And that's defined by being ages 16 to 24, not working, not in school. So if we look specifically at Marion County, we're roughly at 5,000 young people that fit that demographic, not working, not in school, which means they're not contributing to their own cause and they're not contributing to the community. And so it has a very real financial impact on our local communities. And in fact, the report called The Economic Value of Opportunity Youth states that for every one of those young people that are out there, it's a very real cost to the taxpayer of $13,900 per kid per year, right? I say kids, it's youth and young adults really is what we're talking about, right? But if you take the 5,000 people in Marion County and you do the math on that, rounding off to 14,000, it's roughly $70 million a year that it's costing taxpayers in Marion County for every year that we choose not to address this challenge. Wow. What is the challenge? It's engaging what we call this emerging workforce, which we're finding is not so emerging. And so theNET was created to create that first-time work experience space for those young people. Because in talking to employers, one of the things we realize is that if young people are going to learn how to be in the workplace, they need to be there. And so what theNET does is it has three basic pillars, I call them. One is a soft skills component, and then that's coupled with a work experience, which is 200 hours. And then the third piece is an evaluation component. So they're evaluated every 50 hours through that 200-hour work experience against a list of soft skill sets, right? So the work experience allows us to see whether or not they can take the application of the soft skills in the classroom learning experience and apply them in the workplace. The other thing that the NET does for local communities is build that network of first-time work experience spaces, right? So we're saying that the NET is a regional outreach mechanism. So for us, that means Lynn, Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties. And what that does then is creates a system that attempts to create a job-ready standard for the region, especially as it relates to soft skills. So then it shouldn't matter as a young person if I take my work experience at a nonprofit in Polk County or a for-profit in Yamhill County, the net outcome would be the same. And the cool thing is we've worked with local employers, both with our High Performance Consortia group and in partnership with the Chamber, reaching out to some of the smaller employers in our region, in our area, to build a coalition for the support of what we're calling an essential skills certificate. And then the idea is that over time, the community members are working together to help these young people reach a certain standard. And so over time, that certificate gains credibility.
Okay. Yeah. That's a huge undertaking. What kind of population, or you discussed the population already. For one, I'm really curious as to how those young adults are being found. But more importantly, how many of them are just here within our local area?
Yeah. So in our local area, if we talk Marion County, we're roughly 5,000 to 6,000. Now, again, that's 16 to 24, and actually what we're saying in our region is to 26, because it's a little bit shockingly, we have lots of 20-somethings, thousands of them, who have never held a W-2 job, right?
Never.
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 Right. And it doesn't mean necessarily that they haven't worked,
Okay.
because they might have done some yard work, some under the table kinds of things. Maybe they babysat a little bit here and there. But we have lots of young people who have never experienced going to work every day, checking in, punching the time card, and working a full day and a full week, 40 hours a week, right? So that brings with it a certain sets of challenges. The other thing we have is employers who are saying that their people need soft skills. I've had them tell me, just give me someone who can get along, and I'd be glad to train them myself, right? So that's a very real challenge that's out there. So we're 5,000 to 6,000 of those young people in Marion County. If we look at Polk and Yamhill, we're roughly 3,000, give or take a little bit in those counties in terms of that demographic, right? That could be engaged so that we could skills train them. So there's a lot of room to impact that demographic for positive change. And if you think about it, when we make upfront investments in skills training these young people, and we turn them to better paths, we begin to recover some of that cost to society very quickly. Because the other thing that report says is that for every one of those young people out there, there's a social impact cost as well, and that's $32,000 per kid per year.
So we're looking at about $55,000 per kid per year of taxpayer money that's going into that individual. Am I catching that right?
Not quite. So the taxpayer cost is $14,000 per kid per year. Social impact, which means now if they start getting on services, if they get in trouble and they're in juvenile services and those kinds of things, that cost becomes much larger. Right.
Wow.
The other thing I think I'd point out is oftentimes in our communities we talk about at-risk youth, right? And the general definition within our communities of that is the kids who are getting in trouble. When we look at the opportunity youth demographic, those young people aren't the kids that are getting in trouble. We haven't even talked about that population yet in this conversation.
Wow.
But we think that they're one and the same, and they're not. I often will speak to different groups in the community, and I never fails. I have an adult come up to me and say, I have a 20-year-old kid on the couch right now that needs a job, right? And so what I'm finding is this demographic, the opportunity youth demographic, sometimes these young people are coming from dual income families. Both parents work, both parents earn income, and the young person really doesn't know where they want to go and what they want to do. And so we have a culture and a society now that's not pushing kids out to work so much, and there's several factors probably that play into that. But my point is, it's not just the kids that are getting in trouble. So as we think about economic growth for communities, we have to look at workforce, right? That's a very critical component to our companies being able to sustain themselves and grow. And workforce is a critical component to convincing other industries to come to the state of Oregon or our region and relocate here. Because the first question they ask is, what's your workforce like? Well, if we can't produce that through working together as a community, how will we ever get to the place where people want to locate their businesses here?
Start small community and move out from there. Excellent. Now you're CEO of Incite Incorporated. How does that look logistically? You guys being involved with the net, how's that look?
So we're driving the vision for the net. Obviously, Incite Incorporated is a 501c3 that represents the local workforce board, which oversees federal and state resources that come into our region, which is Lynn, Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties. And with those dollars, we invest in skills training for adults and youth. So the net is one of our youth initiatives.
Beautiful. I love it. I love that you guys are investing into our local area, but that affects everything beyond it. It affects how we're able to to be in trade with other nations, and even up the highway to Portland. Everything is affected pretty deeply.
Absolutely.
So, what's the long-term vision that you see for the net?
The long-term vision is that when people have conversations in the community about the net, someone else is sitting there going, so what is that? And the conversation plays out, oh, you're not part of the net? And then it begins to spread through word of mouth like that.
Okay.
The net is, if you're a business, it's offering a space to have that first-time work experience. So our ask to business is not, will you hire this young person? It is, will you create a first-time work experience space so that we can train our workforce as a community, right? And we started the net with the notion that businesses would want to do that if they were only asked. And so in some of our local partnerships, we've created mechanisms to get out and ask them to build those pieces.
Sure. Yeah. How responsive have the young adults been to come into that?
So I think the young adults that we get in front of get excited that there's hope and there's a possibility. The crazy thing about this emerging workforce is they're very hard to find.
Yeah. How are you finding them?
And so we're racking our brains trying to figure out what's the best way to get in front of these young people so that they can see that there is opportunity, right? When I talk about this demographic and how many of them are out there, people often say, well, why is that? Well, I don't know. That's a hard question to ask or to answer because, it could be culture. When I was 12 years old, I was pulling weeds for the neighbors to earn money. I don't see that happening a lot nowadays. Right. It could be the downturn in the economy, where everybody ratcheted back one, and now you have folks with degrees, doing the work that the kids used to do when they would be off for the summer in high school and things like that. So there's this general dynamic out there where kids have less opportunity to be engaged in work. So it's really hard to put the finger on it, but we're trying to find out all the ways that we can to get in front of them and get them out and get them engaged.
Engage in that workforce.
Yep, absolutely.
That's a big importance. Well, we are running short on time, but I'd like to ask you, for one, would you come back to the show again?
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, we'll look forward to that time, and I'll fire more questions at you. But any inspirational words that you can give us in about 30 seconds?
Yes. If we don't figure out how to do this as a community, if we don't come together as government, nonprofit, and business and figure this out, we'll miss out, right? Because the communities who come together to do that and pull the pieces together to get this emerging workforce engaged, they're the ones who are going to win.
Yeah.
Because this is a national problem, not just a state of Oregon problem. So the communities who figure it out first, they'll win.
Excellent. Thank you. I can't add any more inspiration to that. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Salem at Work. I'll see you next time where we will continue our discussion on business and workforce development in our local community. Till next time, have fun. Thanks for joining.